pleasant good afternoon to our viewers and welcome to Living with COVID-19. My name is Sandrine Ratta and I would be a host for this evening session. Living with COVID-19 is a collaborative initiative with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, Ministry of Health, and the Gender and Child Development Unit of the Office of the Prime Minister. This afternoon, we'll be having a very fruitful conversation around domestic violence, child and elder abuse, and of course, we have our subject matter experts who will explore the discussions. We have in studio Dr. Jennifer Rouse, former Director of Aging at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. We also have joining us virtually, we have Mr. Hanif Benjamin, Chairman of the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. We also have ASP Claire Guy Allen, who is head of the Gender-Based Violence Unit at the TTPS. And we also have Farisha Mohammed, who is officer at the National Family Services Division in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. So we have a packed show. Before getting into our discussions, I would like to say a special good afternoon to the Honorable Camille Robinson-Regis, Minister of Social Development and Family Services, and of course, Head of Corporate Communications at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, Mrs. Natalie Walters. Those are two favorite persons, and we thank them for this initiative. So we get straight into our conversation, and of course, I would start with Dr. Rouse, who is in studio with me. Dr. Rouse, a warm welcome. It has been a long time.
It has been years, but we're still in the vineyard. That's okay.
Yes.
That's okay. And a pleasant afternoon to you and to our viewers.
Dr. Rouse, during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have gotten a lot of reports around elder abuse, and you would have made some observations in terms of what has been happening. Share with us some of those observations.
Well, most of the footage that we received since this pandemic began at the start of the year, you could see, has been through the cable network. You have MSNBC, you have CNN that is telling us the very first, from the onset, we were targeting the elderly because they seem to have been the most vulnerable and the most disadvantaged group. And as a result of that, in no time, all over the world, everybody just flagged, look out for our seniors. And not just the seniors who are, of course, aged 60 and over, but especially the ones who had pre-existing conditions, as well as or underlying health conditions. And then you have to understand that what we know in the demographic for Trinidad, and by extension, most of the Caribbean region, because we are aging faster in this region than in the developed countries. What we are seeing is the chronic non-communicable diseases, which are lifestyle diseases. And although the life expectancy for women who are over 60 is longer, because the life expectancy for women is an average 81 years average, and for men, their male counterparts, the average is 78 years. So even though they are expected to live longer, the quality of the lives of these senior women is definitely more compromised than their male counterparts, even though they live longer. So it means, although they have added years to their life, the added life to the years is challenged. And so we had to flag that very early o'clock. And I was impressed to see that the Ministry of Health took the baton to collaborate with the residential care, those who are the homeowners. Because remember, we have some of our seniors in institutional settings. And even though we have, I think it is upward of 169 homes in Trinidad and Tobago, they only constitute about 0.001% of our seniors who are in institutions. That means 99.9% are living in the community amongst us, which is where they are accustomed. But what is the quality of life now in that community? So whenever we hear the word elder abuse, the first thing people jump at is the homes, when reality is showing a whole different picture. Yes, they may have the cases in homes for the aged, but the majority of them are in the community where the rest of us are. So it is incumbent now on the ministry to track where they are. That's where the demographic is so important, to know where we have all the clusters of these seniors. And most of them are along the east-west corridor.
Very important information.
Very, very important.
And let me share with our viewers, and later in the program, you'd have the opportunity to ask questions, share your concerns. We would advise of those numbers later on. Dr. Ross, I have always advocated for the establishment of a monitoring and evaluation framework that would, you know, give us some kind of indication as to what is happening with the elderly. I know the Trinidad and Tobago Association for Retired Persons, I know like 2-3 years ago, they were advocating for a similar kind of mechanism. I'm not sure where it is right now. And I know you made mention of the fact that a lot of the abuse happens in the communities, but why is not reported?
That's the next point. Because of the very nature of this group we're speaking of, who are very vulnerable, they're aged, it is underreported because most of the caregivers are their relatives. So if they go to make it known, they could be evicted from where they are because we're dealing with elder abuse. They could be really now in a more challenged position now because now it is out in the public. And that is not a favorable place to be when it is you are reporting on your own family. So when even we had the Division of Aging, when I was at the Division of Aging, which is still in the Ministry of Social Development as the director, and we had established a hotline, as you would call it. It really was the Older Persons Information Center, which came like a hub where a toll-free number they could call from wherever and lodge and act as a referral facility where they can get goods and services. Lo and behold, that turned out to be a hotline where more and more elder abuse cases were becoming into the Division of Aging. And at that time, we didn't even have inspectors as the division has now. And this was very early because the division was established in 2003, and these calls started coming in from like 2004 and 5, largely because we started an outreach program to let persons in the community know we exist because they never had a Division of Aging before. And this is a line that you can call in thinking, well, it's just, where can I get this and where can I get that? So it turned out that this now, and we used to work in collaboration with the Coalition of Domestic Violence because we didn't have the resources to respond because we just were the policy implementation unit with a program officer, research officer, etc. But now, as the time has passed, the division has now morphed more into a regulatory body with the inspectors there. So these are the ones that have to now go out in the field and follow up. But we have to rely on the public. You know the saying, when you see something, say something? Well, we have to rely on see or hear something for their report to come in.
But I think in 2020, I'm not sure if that is good enough.
No, it is
I
not.
am just thinking, we have the Child Protection Unit and the Children's Authority that deal with issues around child abuse. We also have the Gender-Based Violence Unit to deal with domestic violence. Perhaps we need to consider, and it's a conversation probably to have with the TTPS, to have a unit to deal with elder abuse because they are extremely vulnerable.
But you said part of the solution without knowing it in your statement. What we need, and I have said this on numerous other occasions, you see whatever is done for the children, we are just at the, and you notice I'm saying I'm part of the honorary members of the seniors. We are at the other end of the spectrum. It's a continuum, You will start off as an infant and a child, but you're ending up in senescence, So if it is that you have pediatricians, naturally you're supposed to have geriatricians. Do we have geriatricians? Not in the numbers we want. I think only 1 or 2. So you just said the Children's Authority. We need an older person's authority. And that would be the body where all elder abuse cases will be recorded and reported.
Let me bring Mr. Benjamin into the conversation. Mr. Benjamin is the chairman of the Children's Authority, and I know the Children's Authority has been quite busy over the past number of months. Mr. Benjamin, welcome. Good afternoon. Seem not to be. Hi, Mr. Benjamin. We seem to be having a technical challenge, which we would attempt to fix. So
And
yes,
what is also helpful for the benefit of the viewers, we need to know when we say the elders, who we speaking about? What are the kind of numbers we speaking about? Okay, so Trinidad right now is 1.4 million. Okay, the last census that was done was 2010. You realize what year we're in, and a census is done every 10 years. The pandemic hit from by January. So it means no field work and whatever to get the research. So we have to go now on trajectories of what might have been made from 2010. At the time of 2010, what was recorded was 13.4% of the total population was age 60 and over. That constituted about roughly 177,000 plus persons. Good? But with the data received from the UN, the trajectory for 2030 is that those same seniors will be 17.5%. So I did a kind of calculation. If we started at 2010 at 13.4 and we have to reach 17.5 by 2030, then incrementally every 5 years we're going up 1% more, because remember, people still retiring. And so we in 2020, so it means from 2010 to 2015 we went up one, and 2015 to 2020 we went up another. So right now we should be about 15.4%. So in real numbers, that is about 215,600 persons. You hear where we reach? And so we have to understand this group, and it is not a homogeneous group. They're heterogeneous. The diversity amongst this group is as the same with the rest of the population.
but Dr. Ross, what is also worrying to me and is an issue that was raised with my team at the IWRN. Like children, a lot of the elderlies, they are being abused by the close relatives.
Yeah.
How do we make some kind of inroads in terms of treating with that issue?
What we did, because different to the homes where they are covered under the Private Hospitals Act under the aegis of the Ministry of Health, so you could call on health to go into homes, we need that omnibus legislation to go into private domiciles. So that being absent, we had to co-opt like community police to go in, because they would have the authority. So that's what we used to do. Just call on them to protect us too from where we go in, because we don't know what environment we might meet up with or face with when we get there.
Hold your thoughts, Dr. Ross.
Sure.
We need to take a short break. When we
Sure.
return, we continue our conversations living with COVID-19. Welcome back to Living with COVID-19, a collaborative initiative by the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Ministry of Health, and the Gender and Child Development Division in the Office of the Prime Minister. This afternoon, we are discussing elder abuse, child abuse, and domestic violence. And at this time, we will introduce Mr. Hanif Benjamin, who is the chairman of the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Benjamin, good afternoon and welcome to Living with COVID-19.
Good afternoon to you and to all of Trinidad and Tobago and wherever in the world you are viewing from. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Mr. Benjamin, during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we still have the pandemic with us, we have had a spike in reports of child abuse. I mean, last month, we had an incident involving five men who appeared before Shoguna's magistrate to answer charges of 63 counts of sexual violence against minors. Last week, we had a situation involving a 16-year-old minor who was brutalized by a close male relative, and the numbers just keep going. Could you share with us some of what the Children's Authority has been doing? And I know you have been doing phenomenal work in terms of these incidents.
Well, first of all, I want to put this into context. When you say there is a spike, I am not privy to all the data from all the other agencies, But at the Children's Authority, when we analyzed the data for March, April, and May, we did not see a spike, as it were, because the numbers seem to have been the same, around the same for 2019, 2018, 2017. What I think is happening here is due to the diligence and good work of the Children's Authority and the police service. I think that perpetrators who may have been being investigated are now coming to justice because of the investigation. Because when I look at the data at the Children's Authority, I have seen for the difference between 2019 and 2020, the numbers were about 20-25 different. Can I call it a spike? However, we are concerned. We are concerned because of the situation that COVID presents. We are concerned because our children are home. We are concerned because parents are going back out to work. And as you know, from Monday, they are going back out to work in full. So the data is saying that we should be concerned. And as an authority, we have put measures in place over the COVID period and moving forward to ensure that we can, one, tackle the numbers that are coming into us, and secondly, create a preventative type of collaborative effort with other agencies to ensure that we can get to the parents and children and guardian in relation to child protection.
And Mr. Benjamin, you were right in making the point that what has been happening over the past months is the issue with regards to perpetrators being brought to justice. And it is, it would be remiss of me if I ignored thanking the Child Protection Unit, who we work closely with in terms of that. I want to talk now about the issue around removing abused children from the abuse space and transitioning them into another space where sometimes you have a furtherance of the abuse. We have had those situations. We have had like about 3 of those situations occurring between April and the 15th of May. And of course, we referred it to the authority. But I want to talk about that in terms of how do we mitigate those kinds of situations?
Now, at the Children's Authority, the first and most pressing thing for us when we intervene in a situation is to make sure to ensure to, as far as humanly possible, that the child remains with people that they know and love. We are not about moving children from home as far as humanly possible. That is why the work with the police service is so important. And I'm glad that the police is here because there is a distinction between the type of work that the Children's Authority investigates and the type of work that the police investigate. We provide a social type of investigation. We cannot remove a perpetrator or an alleged perpetrator. We cannot do that. However, we can ensure that the child, the victim, is protected. And sometimes it means that we may have to remove the child from that environment and put the child in another. What we do at first call is to ensure that that child can go with someone that they know, a grandparent, a safer house. If that is not the case, then that child will be taken into whether a foster care situation, which is the next best option for us, or they will be placed at our reception center, or we will place them with one of our partnering residential facility. In that order, because we want to ensure that we minimize as far as possible re-traumatization. Now, what you speak about where someone may further cause harm to this child, we conduct an assessment of the environment that the child is going into. Can we always be 100% right? Can we always get it 100%? No. That is why we have ensured that there are monitoring and evaluating of the place where we place that child. So if something untoward were to happen, we will pick up on it. But when we remove a child, we want to put that child in the least harm environment possible. And so we provide a lot through our LNM, that is our licensing and monitoring department, as well as of our investigation unit, to ensure that wherever we are placing this child, the child is better for it.
Great. Let me bring Farisha Mohammed into the conversation. Farisha is an officer in the National Family Services Division at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Farisha, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you for having me.
Farisha, the National Family Services Division have been doing phenomenal work. I mean, I know you all have been working before COVID, during COVID. It's just a lot. And I want to say thank you for the community caravans, which have been working wonderfully well as the counseling and the other types of interventions that the ministry provides. But what are some of the challenges that you encounter along the way?
Basically, the challenges as of now is at the family services, we do a lot of micro practice. So therefore, we have a lot of one-on-one counseling. So that was the major challenge that we had, where our clients weren't able to come into the office to see us at the inception. We have started back since then to see clients at office, obviously with bits of limitations. That is basically the major challenge for us because of the type of service that we offer, and it's family intervention. We weren't able to completely, be accessible as a result of COVID.
One of the main challenges that we have encountered at the International Women's Resource Network with families is the whole issue of attempting to assist family members who, to unlearn learned behavior, which to some extent has been impeding the functionality of that family. In fact, some of those learned behaviors have become the norm for the families, with them not understanding that it's doing more harm than good. How does the division treat with such an issue?
Well, as we know, the environment is where it has a lot of influence on who a person is. So, different cultures, norms that persons would have over the years, it's very difficult because it's mindset basically what we are dealing with. It's having a person change that mindset, and it's really difficult at times to get into a family and tell them, what, this hasn't been, what is socially accepted or the way forward in which to move out of a situation. It would be meaning that you have to change this certain habit that you would have had. And some clients would have had those habits since they were children. And now to go in there and tell them, it's going to be a change, it's very difficult. And, we have the principle that we are guided by clients' right to self-determination. So definitely we need to have the clients coming to a point where we show them, we work with them and identify the goals, the aims, and what are the objectives of the whole purpose of getting out of that situation. And then that's the only way we can treat with it. But again, we go back to clients' right of self-determination. If that client sees that, okay, I'm going to change, or I need to change this habit in order to accomplish my goal, reach from the present situation to the preferred, that's the only way we can make intervention.
We need to take a short break, but do stay with us as we return to our conversations living with COVID 19. Welcome back to Living with COVID-19, a collaborative initiative with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Ministry of Health, and the Gender and Child Development Division in the Office of the Prime Minister. We now turn our attention to domestic violence, which is a visible enemy. COVID-19 is the invisible enemy, but domestic violence is one of our greatest enemies in this country and all around the world. And let me now introduce ASP Claire Guy Allen, who is the head of the Gender-Based Violence Unit at the TTPS. ASP, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon and thank you for having us.
Yes, you're welcome. ASP, I have said this before, and let me say good afternoon to Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. I did mention to him when this unit was launched that it is so timely and pivotal to what we're experiencing in the society. The unit has been doing a tremendous amount of work. When I call you with any kind of complaints or I ask clients to call you, you all respond within a timely fashion. But I know there are some challenges that you all have been experiencing, both at this more at the side of the victims. If you could share some of that with us.
Well, domestic violence victims, they are a special kind of victim. And it takes a lot for a domestic violence victim to open up to investigators and all of that. However, at the gender-based violence unit, we use all the resources that are available to us to ensure that victims are comfortable and that they are confident that their report will be dealt with by the strictest of confidentiality and urgency.
SP, we have been having a major issue in 2020 and even before that with regards to women who are in abusive relationships and feel they feel threatened within themselves to report it. We had a recent incident. Trisha Ramsaran, 37-year-old mother of one, who was killed on June 9th, allegedly by her common law husband, and that matter is before the court. And Trisha refused to, report her situation. She felt that she could have dealt with it alone. And we have had previous incidents where some of those victims have died and may their souls rest in peace. And we are working right now with two situations, working with perpetrators and the victims to quell the situation. It hasn't reached to you all yet because we are in a stage whereby it's workable. But I'm saying that to ask ASP, what can the unit recommend? What would you like to tell women who are in such situations and are refusing to report them?
Listen, domestic violence, it's really something else. And what I would like to assure victims, the first sign of violence that you see, whether it be the perpetrator or your husband or spouse speaking loudly at you, seek help at that first instance. Domestic violence is seen as a family problem. It was seen as something private before. The thing about it is that domestic violence issues are criminal acts and they should be reported and investigated to the full brunt of the law. I want to tell victims, listen, put your shame in your pockets and come forward. Speak with people. Speak with persons. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be physical. If you seek assistance early, there can be early intervention and stuff can be prevented. Criminal acts can be prevented. Seek assistance. We are asking family members, keep your eyes and ears open. We are asking the nosy neighbor. The nosy neighbor is an important person when it comes to domestic violence and a lot of other crimes. Report it, report it. Let us investigate, let us intervene, let some intervention takes place. Because at the gender-based violence unit, what we do, we don't just take your report and that's it. We take your report, it is investigated. We do follow up after. So we do follow up from the beginning of the report to the end, to the court. And even if matters do not reach to the court level, where sometimes the victim may request that the perpetrator be warned, we do follow up to ensure that both parties are staying within the ambits of the law and there's love and harmony at the home. The victim and witness support unit is used. Other agencies throughout Trinidad and Tobago, the NGOs, community policing, we go to the extent to ensure that persons are safe and love is in the home.
ASP, violence is not gender specific. Can you speak to us about that? Because that's a gray area that I think we need to expand on.
Domestic violence, the victims are not only females. We have had males who report to us, and we operate with the strictest of confidentiality. We have had over 50 males since the commissioner has launched his unit, and thank God for the commissioner having such vision. The gender-based violence unit is so timely at this time in society. We have had over 50 males who have made reports, and the reports have been dealt with sufficiently and effectively.
I want to return to Dr. Rouse in terms of elder abuse and moving forward in terms of, treating with the issues in a way that, we have some outcomes to protect those elderly folks.
I took two definitions. You have a
Yes,
legal.
elder abuse is real. And what is sad is when elder abuse takes place um, where the perpetrators are family. That is really sad.
Yes. So let's get some thoughts from Dr. Rouse.
I took two definitions of elder abuse so that the listeners could understand the parameters of it and so. The legal definition says it's a global social issue which affects the health and human rights of millions of older persons around the world. Okay? So we're dealing here now with human rights as an issue. That immediately triggers the whole question of ageism, which is real and which exists. We have ageism that acts like a sort of a countervailing force over all efforts that might be made to drive the whole question of aging. This was not so. It caused me to look at the Constitution. And in our Constitution, in Chapter 1, Part 1, Section 4, it stated clearly, okay, these are the universal rights of all our citizens, of which they didn't put the word elderly or there. And that's the point I was going to make, because we can't just keep looking at the symptoms at the end point. We have to look at some of the causes, and we're at a legal standpoint. So when we are be hearing about constitution reform and so, when I read that first paragraph and it spoke about what these rights are, the rights to life, to liberty, social property, there was one that held out to me where it said, that stood out, where equality of treatment from any public authority in the exercise of any functions. Good? So these are the rights that elders who are part of these individuals. But what was most telling, they said, barring now, not that word, what we deal with without discrimination by reason of race, origin, color, religion, or sex. Age was never there. And I remember being a presenter at a symposium being held by the Equal Opportunities Commission for that very reason. Because at the time that the framers were crafting the Constitution, age was not an issue. Now, Trinidad and Tobago is squarely an aging population, so we have to get with the times.
We'll come back to that.
Definitely.
ASP Guy Allen, I want to bring you back into the conversation. How can someone make a confidential report of abuse against an active member of the TTPS?
An active member of the TTPS?
Yes.
The rules are the same. It doesn't matter your sex, color, complexion, occupation, status in society, it doesn't matter. You can make the report through the E999. You can also use the police app, and you can also use the online reporting, which was recently launched in the TTPS on Friday. So, once your report is made, it is going to be dealt with in strictest of confidence and effectively investigated.
I want to bring Farisha back into the conversation. Farisha, all of what we are discussing here this afternoon, it is clear that the need for collaborative efforts by all agencies, civil society organizations, community-based organizations is critical. It's critically important. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services is deemed to be the state catalyst in terms of advancing solutions and recommendations to treat with these psychosocial issues. But it can't be done alone. We must come together in a collaborative way that has sustainability. What are some of the things that the ministry and a whole would like to see happen in that regard?
Well, definitely, we know networking is one of the most important avenues in order to be successful at any intervention that we may deem necessary in any given case. So let's just use domestic violence an example. Definitely, we have to liaise with the OPM because the various institutions where persons of who are victims of domestic violence are housed they are housed usually at an institution which falls under their remit. So networking is something that is big on it. So definitely what we would like to see on our end is like something more into a seamless system where we can pick up our phones and call the different agencies, so we can liaise with the gender-based violence unit, we can liaise with children's authority, so that that way we are able to call a direct contact person to make the necessary intervention as required, whether it's in an emergency case or it will be something that, there's a little more room for, maneuvering how to make that intervention.
And to our viewers, very soon we would be sharing the numbers where you can call to ask questions, and our subject matter experts will be only too happy to respond. And at this time, I'd like to bring Mr. Benjamin back into the conversation with regards to the issues around child abuse. And Mr. Benjamin, it's a lot of work. What would you like to see in terms of getting things more streamlined to treat with the issue? As I said earlier, and this is not immune to anyone. Collaboration is critical. It is critical. It is critical. I can't stress how important it is for us to work together if we are committed to protecting all the persons or all the victims that we speak of. We're talking about abused women, we're talking about abused children, we are also talking about abused senior citizens. What would you like to see from your position as chairman of the Children's Authority to strengthen that collaborative effort?
The Board of Management recently, on the recommendation and working with the executive, just approved our tagline, child protection is everybody's business. And it's because we mean that. The way the legislation was written for the Children's Authority, it was written with that spirit intent, where the collaborative, synergistic approach to child protection must be first and foremost. We cannot do this alone. We are just part of the child protection mechanism within Trinidad and Tobago. And in order for this to work, in order for us to get to the families, in order for us to get to the schools and the communities, we must build bridges. And one of the things as a board we have been working tirelessly on, and CPU will know that, we are working on building those bridges by MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, working agreements with various organizations, from governmental to faith-based to community-based, so that we can together protect our children, because the resources are limited between all of us.
Yes, I know.
But we are rich. We are rich if we come together. And so child protection must be everybody's business. And for the new strategic period at the Children's Authority, that is a big part of what we are about to embark on or to continue, which is building those bridges, working with entities, sharing resources, sharing technology, so that we can all get to those children before an abuse happens. And if, God forbid, a child should be abused, we should get to them as quickly as possible to reduce the scourge on their childhood memory.
We need to take a short break, but do stay with us as we return to our conversations living with COVID-19. Welcome back to Living with COVID-19. And remember, you can call us at 622-4141 extension 4. I repeat that, 622-4141 extension 4. And we are discussing child abuse, elder abuse, and domestic violence. Our guests are Mr. Hanif Benjamin, Chairman of the Children's Authority, ASP Claire Guy Allen, Head of the Gender-Based Violence Unit at the TTPS, Farisha Mohammed, an officer at the National Family Services Division at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. And in studio, we have Dr. Jennifer Rouse, former Director of Aging at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. And let me start with Farisha. Farisha, how is the ministry, and even Mr. Benjamin could respond, or the Children's Authority giving support or following up on the welfare of children if impoverished, of impoverished families? Who would like to go first? Farisha? So I'm repeating the question. How is, and this is either for Farisha or Hanif, how is the ministry or the Children's Authority giving support or following up on the welfare of children of impoverished families?
For the Children's Authority, once you have come under our radar as a child in need of care and or protection, our internal mechanism will kick in. And that is the normal follow-up and follow-through and referral as needed. And that is where the whole building bridges is important again, because most times we are to refer a family maybe to NFS, maybe to Ministry of Social Development, maybe to wherever it is. And so once we find a family after our assessment, we then refer that family and we do follow up and follow through.
Farisha, you could share with us, from the ministry's perspective, how you would treat with that situation where, we need to give support or following up on the welfare of children of impoverished families.
Okay, so likewise, if we receive complaints concerning a child who is facing any difficulties, what we usually do, we intervene. We do an assessment firstly, and then based on that assessment, we'll know what the needs of that child as well as extended the family needs. So this is where we start beginning with family intervention, and then we narrow it down. As Mr. Benjamin highlighted, what we usually do is that we network. So there are a lot of times we would have children, because of the situations that they are faced, they would show deviant behavior. So we would refer to the child guidance clinics, we would refer to other agencies where it's a whole networking process in which we go on and how we approach situations. So each case is unique, each case is different. So as the cases differ, so would our interventions as well. So basically what we do is we do a lot of networking, as I said before, as well as we try to manage the case and not only bring intervention to that child, but we would bring intervention to the entire family. So is it that a parent is unemployed? How could we access the various grants from within the ministry for that parent? What is the parent eligible for? What can he or she do to empower themselves? So it's a whole family approach at the National Family Services. That is usually how we get our intervention process.
And Farisha, let me take this opportunity to commend the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for their response to families and to children and to fathers and mothers who were impoverished during this pandemic, and how you all responded in terms of the different kinds of grants, because the IWRN did a couple referrals and we were satisfied with the response, and thank you so much for that.
You're welcome on behalf of the ministry.
Yes. I want to return to ASP Claire Guy Allen. ASP, the issues around violence, domestic violence, we said earlier it's not gender specific. We have had for this period, I would say between March 25th to May 5th, we had 3 reports from males, 2 in Trinidad and Tobago and 1 in another regional jurisdiction, who were being abused. And of course, we intervened and we reported it accordingly. But how do you compare male reporting as opposed to female reporting?
When we look at the statistics, we more or less have more females reporting domestic violence than male victims. However, the female seems to be the figure is a lot larger there in comparison to males.
Why do you think is that? Why do you think it's so in terms of men not coming to the fore? I mean, I think it has to do with how they were socialized. I think it also has to do with um, a lot of persons, including women, still not quite understanding what is abuse. Some levels of abuse that occur in a society have been accepted as learned behavior, have been accepted as norms in a relationship, and that is something that the IWRN and I know other civil society organizations are working towards changing. And that is why I said earlier, the challenge that we have is helping people to unlearn learned behavior that is currently damaging their psyche and their whole well-being. How do you respond to that?
Well, we had started when the unit was formed in January to conduct several outreach programs. But due to COVID, we had to use innovative means in which to continue such outreach. And one of the things we want to start to do is to start at the preschool level. The preschool level, letting boys and girls understand that they can socialize with each other without violence. We let them understand that fighting is not the answer to any problem at all. Fighting is not the solution. We would meet with schools at all levels. We're going to meet at community groups. We are going to partner with the Office of the Prime Minister. We're going to partner with NGOs, and we're going to do a full outreach program in order to edify the entire public about domestic violence. So we're going to change that learned behavior that you're speaking about. And I agree with you. We have some work to do relative to that learned behavior.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it takes time in terms of transitioning to what is acceptable, particularly when it comes to children. And I will bring Mr. Benjamin in on this side of the conversation in terms of unlearning learned behavior, which is sometimes toxic to a child's well-being, such as name calling and describing the child in ways that affects the child's psyche, that affects the child's self-esteem. And if those behaviors are not corrected sufficiently early, what we have is a confused adolescent, a confused teenager, and then what happens as the child transitions into adulthood. So, Mr. Benjamin, what would you want to recommend in terms of us? Because that is, I keep repeating it because it's a pet peeve for me.
What you're speaking about is something that I have often spoken about, which is understanding the child life like a sponge. And that sponge absorbs every single thing. Whether or not you think that that child is hearing or listening or observing, they are absorbing everything. And at some point, they give it back to you. And that is why I am always shocked that you are shocked when the child behave in a particular manner. It is because we are teaching children who they should become. We are giving children the cues that they should follow. And so all of us adults must understand our role in bringing up children because Yuri Bronfenbrenner speaks about the ecological model and everything that surrounds this child and how that interface with the child and the child interface with the system. And so we must be cognizant that a child will pick up what they learned and they will mimic and or they will exacerbate it depending on the environment in which they form. So if you are cussing the child every day, that is what the child will learn and that is what they will go to school and do. And then they're going to be calling Guy Allen to come to the school to talk about a child behaving in a particular manner. But when you really check, his home is a problem. And so this thing we must understand is we are teaching children We are teaching children every single day. When you go down on your knees and pray, you are teaching your child to pray. When you cuss and drink and smoke, you are teaching your child to cuss, drink, and smoke. When you curse at your child, use derogatory terms to your child. That is what they learn. That is what they believe themselves to be. And they begin to behave in the manner in which you have described them. And so later on in life, that is what we will reap. And so if we want to change the outcome, the output, the end result of a childhood, we must put in the work as the adults to ensure that that child has an environment that can be enhancing, that can be loving, that can be tough when it needs to be, but tough with responsibility to guide that child so that they can become that young person that can add value to their school system, can add value to the community, to the society at large.
Mr. Benjamin, I'm so happy you raised those issues with regards to how adults connect with children. I keep saying on different forums that no child is bad. There is no bad child in this world. There is no bad youth. So when you say the child bad and the child, no child was born bad. That child, whatever outcomes you see with that child, whatever behavioral patterns you see with that child, is as a result of the social space that the child was socialized in. And I think it is time that we can use this opportunity to remind adults, and when I say adults, I'm talking about caregivers, I'm talking about parents in particular, that children are not objects, and we need to change the way, change our game. We need to change the narrative in the way we connect with our children and understand that if we want a particular type of outcome, then it's our responsibility to connect with the child and socialize that child in a way that we can get respectable adults. We blame the youths for engaging in crime and different, but that is as a result of their environment. And until and unless we could connect with that and change the way we as adults socialize, we as adults connect with them, we as adults, how we behave in front of children, then we would be having these conversations ad nauseum.
You're correct. You are 100% correct.
Dr. Rouse wants to make a point.
Critical that we understand, because you notice how emotional you and all have become just talking about it. But there was a major cultural shift in the 80s, which we're talking about four decades ago, where we moved away from more communal living to more self-centeredness. So even though you talk and the jargon is correct, that is the major challenge, because because we are living with 5 generations. So the new generations coming out of those 80s and the changes, and as Ella Andel reminded us, the missing generation that have come of age by the 80s, 90s, they are not in the same way that we who are now the retirees and the older ones are relational still. So therefore, you find lots of people are not coming out to just reach out, as they would have to feel a sense of a responsibility to know what's happening with the elder because of that sense of self-centeredness. So you realize this is a layered discussion when we have to deal with abuse of each of the different cohorts that we have touched on. Because one of the points that we notice, and mind you, I'm no longer in the ministry, I'm former director. My title I carry now is gerontologist. And but the point I'm making, before leaving in 2018, what we recognized, the major form of abuse was over property. Because of the self-centeredness and people less relational and more transactional, as they say, where we would buy a house and take a 30-year mortgage and know that this is your biggest asset, they will sell that in the drop of a hat because they are not tethered to those things. So we have to understand the shift in the culture and how we relate to not make it look like, well, because the environment now has more shocks in it that are affecting now children, the family, and that's a whole discussion on how the family has changed. But one last point I want to make, and this I found was pretty insidious. We have a lot of female elders that live alone. I noticed it in how I was driving, but then we got cases that reported too, who lived at corner properties of high commercial value. Alongside that happening is the gentrification of these residential areas into being commercial. So you would see, look at how Woodbrook is, where you have now to look for where these residents are living because they're converting the houses to commercial. And I remember 2 cases came into the Division of Aging reporting from the 2 elders. They had called in saying, people are harassing them to sell the house. Good? Do you know, by the time we were able to get the report and say, well, okay, we'll make a check. And we did make a check with one who was living in a kind of squalor because there was no electricity or anything. By the following week, both houses were burned, not at the same time, just a fire. Now, one of them died in the fire. Okay? That is the one that looked almost abandoned, that nobody was there. And the other one, she was damaged, burnt, but not so severely. But she had to move. There was nothing there for her to live in. In a month's time, what was left cleared, all the rubble cleared, whole area paved. And then you see either a car park for parking spaces. And I find that insidious because you remember I read to you the legal definition dealing with human rights because you have a right to property. But what is the protection of these women who have never married, no children, no relatives? And so I'm reaching out to a lot of our female elders. They have to start relationships with younger people, younger cohort, because people are marking you. They are marking your movements. You follow?
You're watching Living with COVID-19, an initiative of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Ministry of Health, and the Gender and Child Development Division at the Office of the Prime Minister. We are discussing domestic violence and intimate partner abuse, which of course is not gender specific. We are also discussing child abuse and elder abuse. Stay with us as we take a short break. With COVID-19. And remember, you can call us at 622-4141. Just a reminder of our guests. We have Mr. Hanif Benjamin, Chairman of the Children's Authority, ASP Claire Guy Allen, Head of the Gender-Based Violence Unit at the TTPS, Farisha Mohammed, Officer in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the National Family Services Division, and they are all joining us virtually. And in studio, we have Dr. Jennifer Rouse, former Director of Aging at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. And I would like to bring ASP Claire Guy Gordon back into the conversation. ASP, there is a view that domestic violence is based on social strata, and that is not so. We have clients from every strata of the society in terms of career who are affected by abuse. How does the GBV unit respond to those situations? And I will tell you why I'm asking that. Because some of those persons at the higher end of the social strata, they do not feel compelled to report the issues because people will laugh at them. They don't want the neighbors to know. Family members are telling them, no, it's okay, don't say anything. And what would you want to tell those women today, or even men?
The thing about it is that domestic violence does not discriminate. Domestic violence can occur from at the lowest level in society up to the highest. It doesn't matter your status. But what I can assure, domestic violence at no level is acceptable. And today I want to say that this is the time for us to have the conversation. Nobody is to be treated badly. Nobody is to be beaten up. You are not an object. You are a human being. You are God's creation. You are special, and perpetrators, if you are violent, seek assistance, seek out help from family members. Times are so modern. There is help all over. all over there's professional help, and we are asking persons to report the domestic violence, let it go to the full brunt of the law, right? And this time is an exciting time because tomorrow the domestic violence bill, it will be heard in Parliament tomorrow. So I am very anxious, and I think the whole nation is anxious to see what is going to transpire tomorrow.
Yes, I want to bring Mr. Benjamin back in to talk about the youths. I know, Mr. Benjamin, all of what I'm going to say may not fall under the purview of the Children's Authority, but it's a concern, and I know you yourself are passionate about the well-being of children. Last week, we had the unfortunate death of a 15-year-old in East Trinidad. He was gunned down. And I'm bringing that into some context in terms of what I want to ask and my concern. As I said earlier, no child is bad. How do we, as civil society, as the TTPS, as the Children's Authority, come together as a collective to address those issues that are affecting our young persons who, for one reason or the other, may fall through the cracks and get themselves, in the wrong space?
One of the things, one child is one too many. Let me start by saying that. And over the many years, we have seen children gunned down in school uniform, children killed outside. I mean, one child is one too many. For me, for us, it is bigger than the Children's Authority or the TTPS. We must, you see, we get involved later on in the continuum of care. We must engage all people in Trinidad and Tobago to do one thing and to do one thing in the first instance, and that is seeing children as number one. I believe that we have long gone no longer see children as number one. If we prioritize our children, and when I say prioritize from their education to their supervision, to their guidance, to their upbringing, if we prioritize our children, then we are to see when they are going down a particular road, long before they reach in that crack. Why it is we have to wait until they reach to the crack for all of us to be making noise? No. You see, for me, for us, it should be, how do we get to our child from day one? How do we provide the assistance to those families who are struggling? Because I think the data is very clear, not just in Trinidad, but throughout the world. When people are living with poverty, when people are living with trauma, when people are living as victims of domestic violence and all these other things, our children are the ones who suffer and suffer and suffer. So beyond the Children's Authority, beyond the TTPS, all of us, faith-based organization, community organization, governmental organization, all of us must now come together. And I know that we are working on the National Child Protocol that should be going to cabinet very shortly, that brings all of these entities under one umbrella so that we can begin. But beyond protocol and all of that, if you and I, meaning you out there and I, don't put children as number one, see them as important, and start treating them that way, that is how they reach the crack. No child should have to reach the crack, because if the family is going through a poverty-stricken period, then we have National Family Services, Ministry of Social Development, where we should be able to catch them before they fall into those cracks. If a child is abused, we should be able to get in there as the authority and restore that child to a safe functioning. TTPS should be able to go in there and deal with the perpetrators so that the environment can be safe. All of us have our role. And so until and unless every member of this society see children as number one, And secondly, understand their role in the tapestry of Trinidad and Tobago child welfare scheme, then we'll always have to be fighting the cracks to pull them children out of that crack.
Mr. Benjamin, I'd like you to hold your thoughts because I want us to expand on that when we return. You're watching Living with COVID-19, an initiative of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Ministry of Health, and the Gender and Child Development Division of the Office of the Prime Minister. We take a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Living with COVID-19. Remember, you can call us at 622-4141, extension 4. I want to bring Mr. Benjamin back in. Mr. Benjamin, I was listening to you carefully, making some very poignant statements. And earlier you said, and I said it in a press release earlier last week, that the church, the welfare of children, that is the nation's business. Night before, a 2-year-old was gunned down along with her father. And the commissioner of police, he made a poignant remark. He said, where is the protest? Where are the voices? And I'm saying all of that to say that I am not sure if the nation puts sufficient emphasis on the importance of our children's well-being. It takes a village to raise a child. So I hear in some spaces, this is not my child, and we need to change the way we use language to describe situations. We need to change the way we use language to engage with families, to engage with children. And I just want to get some thoughts from you around that, just to add to what you shared just before we went to break.
You are quite right, and I think there must be an emotional outcry when it comes to the protection of our children. We must understand the reason why children are listed as vulnerable is because they cannot protect themselves. And the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child is very clear to whom we are a signatory in relation to the protection of children. But why must we wait for a convention to understand that the life of a child through the journey is exactly the end result? I mean, because if we have a broken child now who may not have received the help that they need, you're going to have a broken adolescent and you're going to have a broken adult. And when you look at the crime that is being perpetrated in the country, when you do a trace study, you can see where those children were back then. And so all of us, that is why I am so passionate about this, because if we are not protecting our children, they are going to do what they can to protect themselves. And if we are not providing the guidance that they need, because I tell you this, not every parent can parent, not because they don't want to, but just because they don't have the ability to. And so whose responsibility it is to help them parent? It is you and I. And that is why the Take the Village to Raise a Child is so critical, because back then, the village would step in and provide the guidance. I remember being corrected by people in my street who were not my parents.
Same here.
Because it was important for them to ensure that I grew up a particular way. And unless, Sandra, that all of us step in and start to protect our children or to provide guidance to children or help parents to guide their children, then we have problems.
Mr. Benjamin, you have hit some nerves there, but let me bring Farisha back in to talk about the parenting workshops that the ministry usually hosts. I know it's is the COVID-19 pandemic, but just Farisha to share some light in terms of what's happening with those workshops.
So, it's certainly that Mr. Benjamin spoke about parenting, because indeed parenting, it's our duties to guide parents, not so much to tell them how to parent their children, but guide them into the proper practices, because we know, as time has changed, so has everything else. We have now had so much influence by technology in itself that that has changed the way parents would, approach situations to date as compared to 10, 15 years ago. So what we have implemented over a number of years at the National Family Services Division is that we would host yearly parenting workshop where we would go out into communities and we try to at least have one in each jurisdiction. So it's not only limited to, let's say, Port of Spain or San Fernando, but we go into rural areas as far as Point Fortin, Rio Claro, various areas where we would have these workshops to guide parents as to how and what are the best practices to parent children of today. What we do include in those parenting workshops is self-awareness. So that is, who am I as a parent? We also have various topics such as technology, abuse versus punishment, and so forth. So that way we are able to let the parents know, here, what this is what is expected of you as a parent. I'm aware of myself. So because I'm aware of myself, what am I to do um, in order to move forward to effectively be that parent that my child needs? Because we need to be who we want our children to be. So we can't say that I'm just going to live any way, as Mr. Benjamin was saying earlier. My children are privy to seeing me doing this and seeing me doing that. So it's what they learn. Children actually learn what they live. So this is where the parenting workshop took effect. Last year, we hosted 3 parenting workshops where it was geared specifically to parents of children who has disabilities. And those workshops were a success. We had a great turnout. We had parents who they came and they expressed the trauma that they would have faced on a daily basis being parents of these children, and those children, the stigmas that went with them when they were out, the looks and things that we would take for granted, that we won't think that a parent who has to face these challenges daily from being a parent of a child who has special needs. We were able to highlight those areas and address it and help the parents through and how they can. This year, what we had geared for, and thankfully the bans it has been lifted a bit where we can start functioning to I believe it's 25 persons now, as of tomorrow, for public gatherings. So what the National Family Services had get this year is having those parenting workshops, so specifically for men. 3 of them, we usually do between 10 to 12. 3 of those would be for men specifically, where we do self-awareness. We are guiding them, on various other areas that will be beneficial to children within the homes, so that parents can have that guide where they can be, you know, just
Yes,
given those tips and areas that they would need
sure.
that sort of intervention in order to address the needs of their children.
Okay.
And one of the things.
Okay,
Mhm.
Farisha, we'll have to hold it there for now because I just want to bring Dr. Rouse back in, just to share with us what are the telltale signs persons should look for when seeking to place their elderly relatives in
in a
senior
safe
citizens' homes. Yes, in a safe
in a
space.
safe space. Usually, most of our seniors get themselves in a regimen. They do the same thing, same time, same day, go to the bank, when they go out, when they come in. And I think the TTPS was also instrumental in doing that, to try, and especially the single elderly ones who live alone, change up your regimen. Don't do the same thing, same way all the time, because you're being monitored. You don't even realize you're being monitored. And as a result of which, they become like what you call hapless victims of the different crimes. So neighbors, but you remember the point I made, if persons have become more self-centered and not more relational, they're not looking out their windows to look to see signs, because that's how we have a victim and support unit, because the witnesses are afraid of even phoning or coming out to say, I saw, because they're now at risk.
Correct, but I was talking specifically, Dr. Rouse, about perhaps the characteristics of a space. how do you identify whether that space is safe enough to house?
That is the difference, because you just can't say a home for the aged, because remember, these older persons are not objects. So you cannot just tell them, I am moving you out here to put you somewhere. You still have to, the human rights, you still have to realize, and that's how we co-opt public health inspectors and the police and the district health visitor, so that they can recommend, if even, that we can place them in a nursing home dependent on the level of abuse, and physical, emotional. Some have to be is mental illness as well. And we haven't even touched on Alzheimer's and what happens. You realize where the
we have a lot
discussion is?
more to talk.
That is a discussion by itself, because they are particularly abused.
But we have come to the end of today's program. Thank you for tuning in to Living with COVID-19, an initiative of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, the Ministry of Health, and the Gender and Child Development Unit of the Office of the Prime Minister. Thanks to my guests, Mr. Hanif Benjamin, Chairman of the Children's Authority, Farisha Mohammed, Officer in the National Family Services Division at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, ASP Claire Guy Allen, Head of the Gender-Based Violence Unit at the TTPS, and of course my in-studio guest, Dr. Jennifer Rouse, former Director of Aging at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. Thank you so much for viewing. Until next time, bye.